Now, this morning, a Boeing passenger jet was on a normal internal commuter flight in China. There were 123 passengers and 9 crew on board as it flew at 29,000 feet. Actually, opinions vary on that. It could have been 31,000, not clear, but high. For no apparent reason, the aircraft entered a steep dive, and the pictures that are on screen now, apologies if you're listening on the radio, but they show a steep dive of a 737, and neither in a tailspin nor breaking up, but arrowing towards the Earth, almost vertically and at very high speed, put at around 350 miles per hour or knots, I suppose. But the reason for the crash isn't yet known. But given that the 737 is by some measures the best-selling passenger plane in aviation history, well, it's a question the travel industry is opening up this summer post-COVID, and you, the flying public everywhere, will be looking to answer. Possible causes at this stage, including a high-altitude stall, jammed controls, sensor failure of some description, and a deliberate act of sabotage or terrorism cannot be ruled out, obviously. It's not thought an engine failure caused the crash, given that an aircraft can glide some distance without power. The plane, operated by China Eastern Airways, involved a 737, but not the 737 MAX variant, much discussed, which was grounded, you'll remember, around the world following 2 fatal crashes. Let's turn to a retired air accident investigator, Steve Moss, who joins me now. Steve Moss, appreciate your time. And obviously we'll start by saying this is only just happened, and we are well into the realms of speculation, but there's a public interest in that speculation, given how much of a workhorse in aviation this type of plane is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the most commonly used passenger aircraft, I think, in the world. So it's pretty important that they find out what's been going on.
Seen footage, I mean, we can't verify it, nor do we have any reason to disbelieve it, footage of an aircraft diving towards Earth. How unusual is that kind of crash in the context of aviation jets, not breaking up in air nor in some kind of tailspin, but really arrowing towards the Earth? Does that tell you anything?
Well, I wouldn't like to say at this stage that there hasn't been a mid-air breakup. I think it would be quite an explanation, quite a reasonable explanation. I've never seen anything quite like this. The information that I've seen online indicates that it was flying quite normally, straight and level, just constant speed, and then just almost instantaneously goes into this steep, high rate of descent dive towards the ground. So, I would, first thing that I would want to do if I was an investigator on the site is check that we have all 4 corners of the aeroplane actually on the site, and that we're not looking at a missing chunk, and it would have to be a fairly sizable chunk of the aeroplane further away, back down the flight path.
Some suggestion that the sizable chunk that may be involved could be the tail fin.
Well, I was struck. I mean, it's obviously a very poor and distant image of the aircraft as it dives into the ground, but it looked as though maybe it might have just been the angle that the video was taken from. It looked to me as though I didn't really see a vertical stabilizer, or what we call the fin. It looked like a missile rather than an aeroplane. So I'd want to check that that or any other part of the aeroplane didn't detach in flight. It would be extremely unusual for an aircraft this new. I think it was in 2015 it was delivered, modern generation aircraft, to have an in-flight breakup, but it has, things like that have happened. But very, very unusual in my 35 years as an accident investigator. I don't think I've seen anything quite like it.
Steve Moss, I read, you say it's only 6 or 7 years old. I read it's, far more than most of us about this sort of thing, that it's the 89P variant, but it's not the 737 MAX, which I mentioned in the introduction there, was troubled.
Yes, the 737 MAX did have a lot of problems, some of them inherent in the design, but this wouldn't fit it anyway. It isn't the same design. The architecture of the control system isn't the same as the 800 series. What appears to happen from the recordings would indicate it isn't one of the 737 MAX, which would have been characterised by sort of fairly dramatic changes in speed and altitude before it hit the ground. So it's quite unique in my experience.
And you can see, and this touches on the business that you're in, Steve Moss. I mean, you can see why people want to get to the bottom of what happened in a crash like this as quickly as possible. I mean, obviously the Chinese do. It's we presume, mainly their nationals involved who've lost their lives. You can see why anybody's involved in aviation, even the holiday makers who use these planes want to know. But also the manufacturers, Boeing, will want to know. Their share price fell by 6% today because of this crash.
Yes, well, I think coming on top of the woes of the 737 MAX, that doesn't surprise me. What will happen, I'm absolutely sure, is that the protocol in such cases of international accidents is that the National Transportation Safety Board will appoint one of their people as an accredited representative, and he will travel, or he should be travelling to China, to the site, accompanied by a team from Boeing, who will supply the expertise from a Boeing technical point of view to the investigation, and that they should work as a team. Of course, one of the things they'll be wanting to do, of course, is to recover the flight recorders, assuming that this is a very high-speed impact. So there's a distinct possibility of damage to one or both of the flight recorders, the so-called black boxes. So there may be a delay in reading those out while the damage is repaired or the data is transferred in slow time. So there may not be any quick answers.
No, but it's one of those subjects which is important to ventilate quickly, isn't it? Because people are concerned as they are preparing to fly at any time. But with the summer holiday season, all looming, I suppose. Steve Moss, really appreciate your time. Thanks very much indeed for your expertise.
My pleasure.